Ladies and gentlemen, I find myself having a bit of a quandary. By the way, this is going to be a solo podcast. I don't have a guest laugh track with me, which is, I think, what I'm going to start calling that. By the way, Meredith is my guest host, but she's mostly a laugh track. And she's actually kind of a hard nut to crack. Like, she's known me for way too long. I feel like when I had Derek from work and Chris from Blue Felix and Morgan Pearson, they tend to laugh. I think they like me is the problem. Like, not that Meredith doesn't like me. She surely does, but she's known me for far too long. And she's like the perfect person who understands me and will do this thing with me when she's available. But she is someone who doesn't give up the laughs too easily. If I say something that generally would get a laugh from some people because it's going a little bit too far, she's heard it. All right. I've known her since, pre-2001. Like, we were living together in an apartment, like a shitty one-bedroom basement apartment. But, since nobody had kids or anything, was actually kind of fine. It was like the cheapest thing in the world, and we could be loud as shit in there. But we were living in that apartment in 2001. Like, I'd moved out, and we'd moved in together. Like, I'd moved out from my parents' place, because this is how young I was. I was like, we turned 21 in that shitty apartment. But I turned 21, and then 4 days later, September 11th happened. And, before I had to go to work at my, not telemarketing, but telesurvey job. And we were actually calling Manhattan that day, which that's a funny story all by itself. And I might save that one because I'm doing the Goth comedy night, which is what I'm going to focus on kind of here on Monday. I'll post this right away. It'll be Friday night or something. So Monday will make sense when you watch this. If you watch it on time, which you should. Or, but then later I'm doing a show on September 11th. And I have so many September 11th stories. And it's not a show about it. It just happens to be that Monday. And I'm going to take full advantage of all that. But Meredith and I were living together when September 11th happened, right? So, and by then we'd already been dating long enough to move in together. And by then we'd known each other long enough to be dating. So it's like, she's known me for a really long time. So getting a cheap laugh out of her is not that easy. Although sometimes it's also a tough barometer because I can make almost any kind of 80s Gremlins or Pee-wee or Simpsons reference or something, and she'll disproportionately laugh at that the way that other people may not. I can pull the same shenanigans with David Murder. So it's is it genuine, or am I just that guy being hey, does everybody remember when this happened in the 90s? Yeah. However, this episode is going to be about the 90s, kind of. It's going to be about, and no one was available. And by not available, I mean, I didn't bother seeing if anyone else wanted to come and be a guest laugh track or guest host, whatever. The main thing is, I don't have guests. So I can do this by myself. I have guests, but I'm not interviewing them. I'm not doing Jared Singer's podcast where, I pretend to interview people and then I just talk. Everybody knows that's a deal. I don't ask anybody any questions. And it's so refreshing because honestly, I hate that. I'm not interested. I want to just join a cult of personality. That's what I want. I want to go, I like this guy. I don't want to hear what that person's friends have to say about anything. I don't care. Once you're Joe Rogan and you're this guy invented nanobots that'll, okay, well, fine. I'd love to hear him talk. And I probably wouldn't have heard of that guy because I'm not very clued into what's going on. I'm an old man and I'm an old cuss and I don't want to hear about it. But it's I will occasionally, Rogan's projection is big enough where I'll hear about it. I'll be oh, I want to hear this guy talk about robots. Fine. Whatever. But beyond that, don't be interviewing people, or do. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying that I won't. I refuse. I won't put you through that, and I will not put myself through that. I don't want to sit here and be so when did you start your band? Who gives a fuck? It doesn't matter. Anyone that I could get on this show, which could be surprising, I'm pretty sure I could get, Martin Atkins or Edsel Dope or someone to at least Zoom for like a half an hour because this podcast is just enough visibility, or those people will kind of respond to me, or someone from Foxy Shazam that I'm actually friends with, someone interesting enough that's got a little bit of weight or whatever, that where people might actually kind of give a shit, but that's reaching. And again, I just why? Like, I love being a guest on someone else's podcast, but again, it's because I'm very interesting. I'm the kind of person that has a podcast where I could just sit and talk by myself and it will get certain amounts of listens and views and things. Not a ton, but strangely more than zero. I don't know. But I would have loved, and I'm due for an episode. This is why. Like, Meredith was going to do it. She wasn't able to. Her, like, car exploded on her, and, like, a full Tommy boy. Like, she was driving down the highway, and, like, the hood flipped off. And it wasn't anything she did. It was, like, the people installing her windshield didn't do something right to reinstall the hood. And it just flew up and just spiderwebbed her car's glass in. Like, pretty bad. Like, it was on kind of, like, a empty stretch of out in the middle of nowhere highway, so it wasn't like she just like wound up like in airport traffic just slamming into a bunch of cars on 494 or something. It wasn't that, which is good. But either way, that's had this ripple effect where she hasn't been very available lately. So now I just have to like sit here and make an interesting podcast while I secretly try to figure out what I'm going to do on Monday, talking about being a goth person, which I kind of was in high school, but now, like, as I was getting ready to sit down and talk about this, I'm kind of starting to wonder if I really was. You know what I mean? Like, goth in the 90s was a little bit different, but so many people are like, well, it just got rebranded as emo, but it's like, that wasn't what I was doing. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't, and when I think about, like, the music I would listen to and stuff, like, I listened to, I guess if you're going to get into subgenres, which, by the way, I hate, because it gave rise to, I literally think, like, the subgenres of goth and EDM and stuff, all these micro, like, it's actually house, jungle, techno, not techno, jungle, house, those are different, and I hate the people that listen to that. It's like, that insanity gave rise to a certain generation's weird obsession with identity politics, because they feel like categorizing everything down to the molecule is actually important or anything anyone wants to listen to or valid, and none of it is. No one cares. It's like, you're just a person, particularly with genres and styles. Like, when I sit here musing, was I really goth? I'm really just talking to nobody about nothing, about something that's imagined. Like being goth or being punk rock isn't like being a fireman. There wasn't an actual uniform you got in the mail. Like, you kind of pretended, you made your own uniform, but no one was paying you. It's not like a real thing. And I don't mean fireman like being goth has to be a job. I just mean like it's actually something. Being a tax accountant maybe doesn't count as much. Being like a fireman is like, you live in the firehouse. Like, that's why that's kind of a good example. It's part of who you are. Maybe being like a mid-level email answerer at some fucking cardboard box manufacturing company, that's not an identity, because it's not like being a fireman, but that's more like an identity, like being goth. It's just whatever's going on around you. You're just sort of dressed up. You just put on maybe kind of a button-up shirt, and you answer emails about, Q3 reports and whatever, and you're like, well, I think, if we ping Mary about that, she has the, she'll know when the shipments for this week go out, and then once they do, whatever. You're faking your way through that, and I think that's what you're doing with anything, when you're a little anarchist or a little, when you got into Rage Against the Machine in the 90s, and you decided you were going to free Tibet and Mumia and all these fucking things that you don't have any effect on, you can't do. And again, that early in life genre-sensitive cosplay, I think actually kind of does have ripple effects, because it's like, you think that wearing like the red t-shirt with Che Guevara on it and really big pants and listening to Rage Against the Machine was actually going to like free some South American political dissident, from unfairly being jailed. It does nothing. Like, none of those t-shirt sales are going to freeing Mumia. Or anything with Tibet. Like, none of it matters. All those like giant rock concerts, like, it didn't do anything. And so everyone got used to the idea of it's fun to feel like we're doing something. Like, if I tell people to go and join like their neighborhood association to try to make real change in their city, they'll go like, well, how much change can you really do? Well, they do nothing and then just post on Facebook about how we should really do something about these bigger things. But then that's all they're doing. They feel like they're doing more than me. Like, I'm actually involved. Like, I've voted on committee things that have gotten like a rebate so people that don't have a lot of money can buy motion sensor lights and security cameras, stuff that costs more in parts of a neighborhood that are a little bit scary, and it might actually kind of help make the difference between someone hanging out in their car, like waiting for the people's kids to like come out into the alley so they can, God knows what or whatever. It's like, oh, these lights come on, this camera's pointing everywhere. Oh, they kind of disappear. Well, those are all expensive. Oh, well, I helped make it so city funds will pay that for people, and we're sending out a giant mailer that's going to explain. And they're like, well, okay, but they're just surveillance stuff and pointing cameras at people. It does a little more than nothing, though. That's the thing that I just love, is that when you do something and it's not much, someone who does literally nothing, but they post about things often and loudly and about gianter issues on Facebook, they feel like they're doing more than you. But they're doing less than you. They're doing less than nothing. They're annoying and causing random stupid things to happen. Like, well, now we have to remember to always say this. And it doesn't free Tibet, does it? The Beastie Boys didn't free Tibet. It's just not happening. And it's weird because it's always younger people and it has roots in like, I'm goth. Like, is that what you are? I think you're actually just like a kid from like lower middle class suburbs with nothing to do. Now, I was a poor kid with a chip on my shoulder, and somehow or another, I was talking about music, but yeah, I got into like, I was like a Nine Inch Nails, Rammstein, Marilyn Manson, I liked all that stuff. I like stuff that was a little heavier, but I think when people go, oh, goth was just proto-emo, it's like, well, yeah, because those kids were all like crying in the dark and listening to The Cure. They were like sad, and it's like, I don't think I was that sad, I was just aimless, and also I was big. Like, I'm a large man currently, and I was about this size since I've been in 7th grade. Like, since I was an early teenager, I was like a 6 foot tall, 200-pound thing. Like, I got yelled at by the civics teacher that was also the gym teacher to be like, hey, Wheeler, you should get out on the gridiron. And I'm like, I don't want to play football because it's stupid. And I'm glad because I didn't get a concussion. So, I don't exactly come from opportunities and generational wealth. All I have are my smarts. My smarts are the only reason that, I bought a new Mac computer today and I didn't really feel any pain. I was like, okay. And I live in a house and everything is fine. Do I live in a big house in a wonderful neighborhood? No. It's an okay neighborhood and I'm doing my part to make it better. I'm driving a 10-year-old car. Like, I'm not rolling in it, but all that I do have is literally I owe to not getting brain damage in high school playing football. So maybe I owe some of my relatively pleasant life now to being goth. My wife is kind of goth and was kind of goth when she was younger. Like, it's a bit of a common thread. I didn't always dress like a 70s game show host or some, I don't know what I'm doing right now. I guess some guy at an art opening that's telling everybody everything sucks. Like, or ongoing explosion, charmed, I'm sure. I would love to be that guy, I guess. But, some sort of Andy Warhol absinthe dickhead, which is a little goth. I was kind of artsy. I was artsy for like a big ogre. I just remember that, like, me and my friend Brett being really goth and being like the first people when everyone was like afraid of Marilyn Manson in 1995 and being like, is that guy a chick or like what's happening? Like, everyone was like just had this opinion about it, and like we were the first ones to show up in t-shirts, from that, and the reaction was just hilarious because like we were so much bigger than everyone else. Like, I was bigger than most of the football players, like and poorer and kind of more violent. So it's like, I wasn't like a bully, but I was certainly like, I'm totally good until someone starts getting in my face, and then you're absolutely maybe even getting stabbed, let alone just shoved down a flight of stairs. Like, you don't solve your problems like that now as an adult or whatever, but when you're a kid that's got like 50 pounds on the yappy little bitch that's like in your face, it's like, just punch him in, the neck. That's, pick him up and throw him against the wall. You're so much big. It's like I could fucking push people around in high school the way I could go to a high school right now and push the high school kids around. Like, it was unbelievable. It was like so unfair to them because they wanted to call me a fag so bad. And every time they did, and it wasn't 2010. So it's not, they wouldn't get charged with a hate crime, but I'd still get in trouble for like bashing their face in or whatever. Like, it was the 90s, so it was like, well, they wouldn't get in trouble for a hate crime, but I could almost kill them. And then the school would call my parents, and they'd be like, yeah, well, we told him that if someone starts, like, treating him like shit and trying to hit him, that he should hit him back. Now, the fact that I would, had like 6 inches on someone, hit them back, it would be, I didn't know how to throw a punch the right way, and it didn't matter. If I did, at least my wrist wouldn't get hurt so bad. But that person was, it's like that, be careful, you'll hit your head on the concrete. But see, does this make me a good goth kid? Because goth kids were all about being picked on or whatever. And this isn't like a good story. Like, no one's going to like me for this story. Everyone likes an underdog. And there's a lot of people that listen to this, and we're in this together. I am kind of like a lefty guy, but I am kind of like I'm not like a radical person that's like, we need to tear everything apart. And I've gone on about that forever. I'm someone that says when you go far enough left, you get the guns back, but I'm not really that far left. I just have the guns and a Prius, and I was at the Mac store earlier. So, I mean, the Apple store, I don't know. So I guess I don't know what I was then. I don't know what I am now. Just an asshole, I guess. Like someone who doesn't have a lot of faith in society, but definitely like wants it to keep existing because it falling apart would not be good for me because I'm too old for that. Like, yeah, I know my way around firearms and outsmarting other people, but when all bets are off, I'm much better at outsmarting people when there's a system to play. You know what I mean? Like, when I was freelancing forever, I realized, I didn't have, a job I went to every day. And now I luckily have one that I really like. And it's like, but when I had ones I didn't like, I would just malicious compliance all day. I would just be like sabotaging things. They didn't pay me enough and they were mean to me. But I like my job now. But I'm still kind of like learned the system of the way my job works and like have figured out how to kind of be like, okay, like I want to see this happen and I don't want to deal with this. And I kind of know how to like move things a little bit, just use a little bit of the force to kind of, it's like, okay, everything's a little bit more the way I want it now. Is it much? No, because it already is a lot of the way I like it. So it's not really a problem. But that old itch, that old muscle that needed flexing of, sort of being able to be like, oh, I'm in this situation and I can alter it, kind of came back. So, I digress. When I sign up for things like a goth comedy night, I think I'm going to be really out of place. Because, again, I wasn't like a rich kid or a jock kid. I was just like a big smart ass, but I just liked wearing black clothes. As a matter of fact, and it's like I went through towards the end of high school, I started wearing pleather, like pleather pants and boots and like a deep crimson vampire-y like silk shirt or whatever. And this is when I had my long black dreadlocks. I'd first started doing that, and it was kind of like, I think it was just to fuck goth chicks or whatever. But it's like regular chicks once I started looking like that were way more interested in me, which is really funny. Because one thing I did want to talk about is how I always remember like goth chicks back in the day going, it was so weird. It's like the regular guys have this fetish for like goth chicks. And I would always tell them that like, no, they don't. They don't really have a fetish. You're just a chick, right? And most of the regular chicks were just like uptight bitches, and you're running around, with your ass hanging out in like black fishnets and just like a big jiggling set of daddy issues, which means instead of going like, I don't know, I just want to make, I want to wait till after college in case I get pregnant because I want to get pregnant, but then I want to get married and whatever. And goth chicks were just like, you don't end up like that for no reason. You're a little bit more down to do crazy shit. So it's like, okay, well, I don't know if it was so much of a fetish. It was more like, can I get laid by a hot girl? Which was, at that age, everyone's thing they were trying to do. They kind of didn't care who. They didn't really care. Well, he's not going to want to have the craft playing in the background while I'm bent over the couch because my parents are never here. It's like, I think he's fine with that, But real goth kids, like the sad kids, the kids that listen to The Cure, not the kids that listen to like Rammstein when it was brand new. Like, they got beat up, and they got not laid, and they got, you know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know. I think, like, me and a couple of my friends were just dressed goth because we knew we were just dicks. Like, dicks with not, like, a lot of advantages, like, not like the kids that you're always trying to beat in the 80s movie when you're skiing, It's, like, not like that dicks, but, like, rough and tumble kids. Like, I didn't really, I didn't smoke weed or drink until I was, like, in my early 20s. Like, I didn't care because all the kids who did were annoying. I'm sure if they were fun, I would have been a little bit more inclined. But they weren't. You know, they were part of the class of the party people that I just wanted nothing to do with. Although then once again, me and my friend Brett threw like a senior year party just at his place, his parents' place, and they're out of town. And we had like bands playing there, and they had one of those like pull down 80s projection TVs, and we were just like running porno on it. And people were like, "Oh my god!" And we had made friends with these sort of older death metal kids by that time, and the party was just absolute mayhem. And like, but like all the stoner kids, all the jocks, and all the people were just drunk out of their minds at that thing, and it's just like we were able to pull that. I don't know what it's like to be a loser, I guess. Is there a different kind of goth person and I'm not saying I'm a super successful guy. It was like high school was just kind of a disaster. And then like chicks started getting interested in me in about like 11th grade when I started having a sense of style. Maybe that's all it took. It was just that confidence that comes with dressing up in a way that makes everyone want to beat you up and you know that they can't. Was that it? And when I talk about the blueprint for other people's lives, like, oh, you know, being all into stuff that doesn't matter and then getting older and then being all into stuff that doesn't matter and not making any kind of difference in the world, you know, it carries through. Was I being antagonistic on purpose to get attention, knowing that I was a little bit hard to touch, and like leveraging people's perception of me is something that I just have done my whole entire life? Maybe I was just goth as a byproduct of learning that. It was out of convenience or something. You know, because it's like I'm going to wear lipstick and then someone's going to try to push me and then I'm going to twist their arm behind their back and bash their face into the lockers as hard as I can a bunch of times until the teachers go, "Hey, come on." Because again, it was the 90s. Yeah, we got out, like, Columbine happened my senior year too. And I remember like that's when people kind of started looking at us funny a little bit more, like a little bit more seriously. But then that was funny too, because like the news came to the school. We were like the goth kids at the table. And they intentionally, like the local Channel 9 news, I remember this. They were trying to do a piece kind of quietly. Somehow we figured out what they were talking about. I think we asked a teacher who wasn't supposed to tell us. And they're like, well, I guess it's about this. Like they just, like they're the news, not the cops. Like, you know, it's either a cool teacher or a teacher that didn't care, or both, I guess. But yeah, you could tell. We saw it on TV later because, again, it was harder to film things. You couldn't just redo stuff. So they wanted to talk about, like, the trench coat mafia, the goth kids at the table. But we knew they were there, and we knew what they were talking about. We could tell they were filming us, so we were all just, like, smiling and waving all nice, even though we're all wearing, like, probably, like, eyeliner and black button-up shirts and weird medallions and things. I don't really know. I'm not dressed that differently now, I guess. Probably, like, shit didn't fit as well, I'm sure. But, yeah, like, we ruined it. You could tell the newscaster looked mad. And, like, we'd go to a Marilyn Manson concert, and the news would be there because the Christians would be protesting it, and we'd be, like, throwing crap at them and stuff, and they'd try to keep their cool while, well, we turned the other... Ow! God damn it! I mean, it's, like, on the news. Hey, they're at him again. Why was I on the news so much? I guess. And that's it, right? Because... goth kids, it was weird, and then, like, Columbine happened, and then Christians protesting Marilyn Manson, and all that stuff. All of that stuff, and out of all these, like, boring, just crackerjack fucks, you know, no one had invented non-binary, like, you know, there's, like, 4 black kids, like, there's just nobody different. It still kind of looked like the 50s, a little. Not the 50s, maybe, but you know what I mean? Like, no one was that different, so we were just like, okay, well, we're gonna actively be different. But it can't, like, the onus and reasoning behind other people and other stories and other schools and other timelines and other whatever, for them being goth, can't be the same thing. You know, it's like, I just want to show my outer sadness. Or is that just a trope? Has the media made up the sappy goth? Is that what this is? You know, like it turns out it was kids that were big enough to be football players, but that I don't know, we're just like a little smarter, a little bit just done with the way things were. You didn't like the status quo, but what are you going to do? Well, you can control the way you look and stuff. And you can look a certain way that draws attention to you. And it's like, oh, some chicks will start seeing you as like a rebel. And then like guys that are actually pussies that play sports are going to want to fight you, and you can all but kill them. And that maybe that's the thing too, because again, it became, you can't even fight back against a bully like now. So now you're emo or past that, non-binary, whatever it is. Like, I just like, I understand that non-binary is different. I just like using it as like, oh, that's the newest. That's the newest thing with blue hair. When I was a kid, it was the punks and the goths, and you know, we had the blue hair, and the mantle's been passed. The name changes through the years. And again, I know it is different. I'm making a little bit of fun because I'm a comedian with a podcast, and I didn't force my wife to do it. She's upstairs, you know, unwinding from work. I'm not going to force her to come and sit here through my bullshit about being goth, even though she was a goth kid of a different era. Actually, if she had joined me, I could actually kind of ask her, why did you want to be goth? Like, what actually is that? Because, like, I'm kind of parsing out my own reasoning for it now, and I'm learning things right in front of your eyes, about myself at least. And it would be interesting to learn a little bit about, you know, why other people do things. And it's, you know, if I were to ask Meredith, you know, like, well, why were you kind of goth and punk and alternative or whatever? She'd be like, meh. You know, she might not have an answer. But, or maybe we'd come to some big realization. That's also possible. I don't, again, like, this is actually kind of an interesting introspective look, because I've been sitting here going like, how do I do this goth comedy thing? My experiences are not going to be like anyone else's in that room. Now, mine often aren't, and I've found a way to be funny despite of that. So I'm not actually very worried, but I wanted to think about it out loud a little bit. That's mostly what this is. Because again, like, you know, like I've played in rock bands that have played at the Gathering of the Juggalos while like C-list influencers nearly got drowned in a porta potty like after our set. You know, it's like, oh, do you have an experience like that? It's like, well, one time I went to a concert. Like, okay, right, but you've never had 3 girls blow you at once just because you're in a band and the singer wasn't available. Like, I guess the bass player will do. You know what I mean? Like, do you know what that's like? No, you don't. And I'm not saying that there's anything necessarily great about that I'm like flexing on. I'm just saying that the amount of traveling I've done, you know, I would still have, it's actually really funny. Like, I'd still have, like, you know, my folks would be like, now, when you're in Las Vegas, I'd be like, okay, how many times have you been in Las Vegas? They'd be like, well, once. And I'm like, okay, I've been there for fun twice. I've played shows there like 5 times, and I've had to fly there for work I was doing twice. It's like, I've been there like 10 times for every different reason under the moon. And you're like, well, when you're in a hotel in Vegas, it's like, and you know this. But I don't blame them necessarily. It's mostly that it's hard to remember. Because people are kind of just self-centered and boring, and, you know, everybody, not and me too. You know, I'm not saying my folks in particular. I'm just saying that anyone that they know, and everyone that you know knows you, but they just forget things about you because they're only ever remembering things about themselves mostly. Because that's how people are. You know, so it's a very special kind of like weird account man, salesperson that actually remembers things about other people. Like, you know, my friend Spencer from work, I call him the Rememberer, like in capitals, like it's like a tarot card. It's like he would be there like remembering things. Because he'll remember dumb shit that I've said like 6 months ago and what I meant by it accurately and all this stuff. And that's actually like a rare talent, which I try to tell him because I'm like, that's not like, people like to think that that's how everybody's supposed to be. Like, I'm supposed to remember someone's name that I've only heard their name 50 times. It takes like 100, and I have to be around them more days than not, and then I'll remember it. If I meet somebody once, it's like, oh, remember your name, but he will. Like, you know, he would be like a great high level like corporate guy. I mean, we're all artsy weirdos, so does anyone really want that? Understandably, maybe no. I mean, I kind of like the idea of being in the RoboCop boardroom, you know, making horrible decisions and just going like, you know, like we just, you know, watch a guy get shot by a prototype and just not even blink and be like, okay, well, you know, it doesn't matter because we have a military contract, you know, with spare parts, repairs, upgrades for 25 years. Who cares if it doesn't work? Oh, I love that. I was one of those guys in another life, I just know. But it's, you know what, when you do that job, though, it's mostly just paperwork and not being yourself and having to be uptight like all day long. And then just like every once in a while, someone does a pitch meeting where an out-of-control battle droid just starts spraying the guy with gunfire because they actually loaded its cannons with stuff. Oh, the funny thing, too, is you think about in RoboCop, the Ed 209 scene. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch the old RoboCop for fuck's sake, or you can't be a citizen of this country without watching that movie. It really teaches you a lot of things. Or if you only saw it when you were a kid and remember it being kind of fun or kind of cheesy, watch it as an adult and you'll understand the way the world works so much better, especially now. But the funny thing is people are like, oh, well, yeah, it's so silly that they loaded the weapons on that thing. It's like, okay, but the thing was also like 25 feet tall and like, you know, every joint in it was stronger than a forklift. It's like, even if it wasn't, it could have gone click, 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 click. Oh, never mind. And it just took a couple of steps and just whacked that dude out the window with its arm. Like, it actually kind of doesn't matter. It was way too dangerous, literally no matter what. It's like, well, we didn't put any gas in the flamethrowers. It's like, it did stomp his head in, though, in like under a second. We couldn't get away from it. Like, yeah, the whole thing. But that's a fun day at work. You never volunteer for that. You know, don't point the gun at the giant murder robot. I know maybe you're new. And maybe, you know, your boss took you to he just took you to a steakhouse for the first time. And you're feeling a little bit confident, but now you're in this big room and you're feeling a little out of your depths again. So you raise your hand and go, I'll point this Desert Eagle at this automated killing machine that no one's tested in the field and just kind of, we'll just see what it does. Don't be that guy. Be the guy that gasses that guy up to do that, and then when that guy gets shot to death, go and reassure the boss that you know it was nobody's fault really, and you know I think that I think I see the potential here. You know I think that he was a good man for volunteering. I was just about to, and then he you know what to do, right? You know how to be corporate scum. There's nothing more goth than dreaming about making money off of the violent murders of people at the hands of cold technology. But maybe that's the industrial goth in me. Maybe that is that subgenre. Maybe that is that Rammstein, KMFDM, Nine Inch Nails thing where it's not... I'm always going to go back to The Cure, and I think it's because I don't like them. I really don't. I know people that absolutely love them, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't hate it. It's not like country. I get it. But I would never willfully listen, you know. If I'm going to listen to anything that reminds anybody a little bit of The Cure, or that maybe Apple Music thinks is similar to The Cure, or whatever, it'll be David Bowie. Like, I'm sorry, but be a man and listen to the Thin White Duke. Don't fucking listen to Chubby McEyeliner. Like, no. No, it's just, I mean, it's fine. But when you compare it to David Bowie, you're just jerking people off that you've never met. David Bowie died a hero. And he could have lived 10 more years and he still would have died a hero, no matter how old he got. You know, he never would have had that phase. He was still making stuff that was cool. And, you know, he's a little bit of a goth icon. He's kind of for everybody. Yeah, I don't know, though. I don't think I was really goth. And I don't want to say that I was like the other thing is like punk rocker, because there's some crossover. But the weird thing is like, I was just about to say I can't be a punk rocker because I don't care about anything. But then the irony there being, and I'm using irony correctly, is that, oh, well, goth or punk rockers, that's the thing, is they don't care about anything. It's like, well, yeah, but famously that's not true. Famously that is kind of ironic because, and the movie SLC Punk definitely points this out pretty accurately, that, you know, at the end, you kind of realize that everyone's a poser. Like I was saying at the beginning, everyone's just like, it's not even a real thing. It's just a thing you just pretend to do. Like, it's just, you're being a kid. It's not really anything. And it turns out people, they care about way too much in their punk rockers. We care about the scene, and we care about this band, and we care about, I only listen, you know, it's like, I like some punk stuff, but it's the thing, I liked some punk stuff. Like, I like the Dead Kennedys. And that was the one thing, too, in the company of punk rockers when I was young. You know, if you were just like, I like Green Day, it's like, they'd be like, you're not a real... So I was always smart enough to be like, you know, who's your favorite punk band? Dead Kennedys, because that's an honorable answer. But it's also true. They are kind of my favorite, especially when you're talking about real punk, not sing-songy. I do like Green Day and stuff, and I like Rancid, who, you know, whatever. Like everyone else, I like NoFX. I like those things. But that's the thing. I only like the 4 biggest bands out of any genre. Like, I don't give a flying fuck about deep dives into music. Like, I love listening to old obscure jazz records and all this stuff. Like, I do like doing that. But as far as, like, modern-ish genres, Like, well, if you like industrial, how come you're not listening to Front 242? And I'm like, they are kind of cool, but I just don't care. They've never made anything as good as the Downward Spiral. Get the fuck out of my face. Like, well, it's about the hits they're not making. Like, shut up. Like, I like it. I like them. I like VNV Nation. I like, weird industrial things. But a lot of it just isn't very good. Like, it's just like fine. But a lot of it's like the people. Okay, let me put it like this: the people that have copied things like Front 242 and VNV Nation and stuff like that, which I think are great. But the people that have copied it, like the other bands out there that you don't know the names of, that sound just like it, are just as good. And it's just some hipster thing to care about. Well, these guys kind of did it first, but did they? You don't know. They're the first thing to get a little bit popular doing it, so you remember them, and not just some local thing that did their best and just weren't in the right situation to get anywhere, which is definitely a thing that maybe they heard, and then their parents loaned them some money to do whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, well, then you've heard of VNV Nation, but maybe they took whatever they were doing from a few like actual heroin addict, poor, weird industrial bands and wherever they're from. And it's like, you'll never hear of them. They're dead. There was no MySpace back then. There's no record of, they couldn't afford to go make an album. They couldn't afford a lawyer to sit in a room with a record executive, So you don't know. So when I go, the things that have ripped them off and also been popular are just as good, and you go, well, no, but they did it first. Yeah, I don't know that they did. But I'm not here to have a fake shower argument with people about industrial music. My point is mostly that I don't know. Either maybe I'm a little bit elitist about quality, but the irony of being, and again, I'm using it correctly, an elitist about quality is that it makes you the opposite of what a normal elitist is. Like a normal elitist, I've mentioned this before where, people went through that phase, particularly here in Minneapolis with music, which is just the most own fart smelling circle jerk weirdo fest of people who are like kind of big from this area, but they never get anywhere else. And I won't name names, but no, I will. It's like I couldn't care less. I'm using that right. I couldn't care less about Rhymesayers or Dessa or whatever. And like a lot of that too. It's like people in other places might know what that is, but mostly they don't. To the point where there was people that I was friends with that thought that Prince was only big here. But it was like after both the Batman soundtrack and when he did the Super Bowl. Well, he's just a Minnesota thing. No one cares anywhere else. I'm like, well, that is not true. That guy was like another Michael Jackson almost. Like that's different kind of thing, but still almost. It's like he was like almost that big, and like all around the world and stuff. And so they didn't get it. They just assumed it was another one of those up its own ass stupid things that's like huge here, and then just like if you get past the Dakotas west, like no one cares. No one knows what it is. And so, oops, damn it. See, this is why I need another person here so they can remember where I was going with that, because I kind of don't right now. But, let's see, music. Oh, elitism, right. Elitism is usually about going, musically, oh, I knew what this was before it was popular. It's like, I like Bon Iver. Oh, that's what I was going to talk about. Shit like that. Shit that you just listen to because you goddamn know that it's stupid. Because that will save you from ever having to deal with other people hearing about it. And then you having to go, yeah, but I heard about it first. Because your whole identity is wrapped up in, like, I get it. But here's the thing. There's nothing to get. And when the Mumford & Son era was happening around here, and everybody had their banjo and washtub bass and everything, and it's like, but it also wasn't good. Like, I would love to go down to, like, a Mississippi Delta Blues Festival that not that many people have heard of, and maybe there's guys that are really, really doing, like, they're wearing bow ties and they have like homemade instruments, but they're playing the shit out of them. Like that kind of thing is transcendently incredible, and maybe there's some banjos involved, and it's kind of, well, you're like, yeah, but those people have lived a real life and they've struggled, and if they're not a college student that goes, well, I grew up in a gated community. And then, my dad worked for Raytheon, and I would steal my mom's Valiums. And then they sent me to like a giant city like New York to go to like college. And then I came back to the gated city. And you know what? I didn't experience this whole time is real life out on the farm. That's the real punk rock. And you already know what I'm talking about. That's the real, like, people who support, there'll be some guy that'll be like, here's, this dude, some large man with a large out of control beard and like large out of control hair and Jeffrey Dahmer's shop teacher glasses, wearing like overalls and a rope for a belt and a flannel shirt, playing a slightly out of tune, piano from a kindergarten classroom. And it's singing in like a lilting, slightly out of tune whisper, this song about how the farmer looked upon his field and knew that it was good. And everyone's like, yes! Like, this is the new indie hipster punk. There is nothing more out of control and wild than that, because it's like they didn't have to experience what I just described in real life. They didn't go to my broke, terrible, awful dump of a public school where the most entertaining thing was something just like that guy. Some guy in a flannel shirt and Jeffrey Dahmer glasses that was going to come in and just be like, and they're going to be like, he's going to do some music about the struggles of the native peoples today. And he's like, ooh. And you're just like, God, what? I mean, that's an important struggle, but like, it's some white guy. You're like, what is this? And you just like, that was it. It's like, there's like barn dances and just shit that you just don't get. But people who are kind of like in a bit of an ivy tower, and here's the thing, they would never admit to that. They don't want to admit that they're from a gated community and they went to like, school for something that's not profitable because they're just going to go work at their dad's company anyway and just keep doing photography as a hobby while they live in this high rise that almost no one could afford and just lie on the internet about how they afford it by taking pictures of like a chair by like a window with light coming through. It's like, okay, like, don't. And by the way, that's a whole other thing. Like when the amount of people that lie about why they are where they are, which gives people false hope about what they can do. It's just like, well, you just come from like a rich family, so you can pretend that taking pictures with all this expensive equipment is why you have a summer home. No, you don't have a summer home. It's why you have a really nice apartment. You get the summer home when you finally buckle down and quit wasting time pretending you're a photographer on the internet and go, work for the defense contracting company your dad got you a job at, even though you didn't go to school for business or anything like that. You went to school for just art appreciation, but it doesn't matter. You're going to be someone like me's boss because of your dad. And, but in the wake of destruction, the little wake of destruction you'll leave on your way up. When you get to where you're going, you're just going to help people strip mine Africa and drone strike, towns that are getting in the way of that. But on the way to your ultimate throne of splintered bloody bones and twisted metal will be minor war crimes, which is, convincing generations of people that like you can just take pictures or make a song. And it's like, yeah, right. And it's like no one admits to where they came from. It's the Kid Rock syndrome. He's the perfect example because he sucks and I hate him and whatever, but also he is that thing where he's like, I'm straight out the trailer. It's like, no, you're straight out the gated community. Like, that's how you got anywhere with this. Someone who's actually straight out of the trailer. And again, because I didn't get head injuries playing sports in high school, I was able to take my big nothing and turn it into like an okay life. Turn it into, again, not a brag, but like all I got is me wits about me. And it made me look, it's like I may appear sitting before you today as someone who's marginally handsome, but I used to be a lot fatter and like, I was coasting on nothing. There's nothing to coast on. Except for the fact that I could figure out that I could bend the rules and get away with it. Like, and again, I've mentioned this in the podcast before, maybe talking with Chris or Derek, but I'm someone that I like the rules, but not because I'm an authoritarian. It's because I like to break them. And I think the rules are like a filter where it's like, if you're smart enough to break them and get away with it for real and not have to, not bitch, not sit there and be like, well, no one ever helped me, and no, I'm so smart, but it's like that, then you're obviously not. Because, again, there's a handful of people out there, and maybe lots of people, honestly. They might just be quiet about it, because it's smarter to not say anything, right? Like, I'll go like, oh, yeah, I just talk about crimes I've committed all the time, not drive-bys, but just being like, maybe this goes on this paperwork instead. They have no way of knowing any different, and then finding out, oops, that worked. Well, here I come to Lone Town, But it's like I'm not trying to set some sort of weird example or anything. I'm not saying to try to be like me, but what I am saying is like, maybe you don't believe me, but I honestly am someone that managed to kind of bend reality to his will without having all of the things you would need in order to do that. Like, you read the internet and Reddit stuff, people like, how do you even make any money? Like, what do you do? Like, it's like, I just made some weird choices, and things are bad. And I'm not saying you deserve to be poor if you're poor, but what I'm saying is it's hard, but you can kind of like, you can game the system a little bit. You just really can. Have some faith in, you know what? Have some confidence in yourself. If you were a goth kid that just cried in your eyeliner all the time, stop being a cure goth kid and start being a Marilyn Manson goth kid, right? Like, maybe you got dealt an even worse hand than me. 'Cause it's like, at least nobody ever hit me or anything, and nobody molested me or whatever. So I have that going for me. So there's probably trailer trash goth kids that are honestly sad because, like, you know, their uncle was fucking them. You know, they're just tragically broken and whatever. And people would ask me, John, you know, like, well, you know, like, let's say everything was the same, but then also you had to deal with like your uncle fucking you. And again, I don't know what I would do, but maybe I would fuck him better. Maybe I would just be smart enough to know that if he wants this sweet goth pussy, that he's got to put in a little bit more work, and I'll make it worth his while. But, you know, maybe I film it, and then maybe I blackmail him, and then maybe I go, hey, how about I'm going to show this to your fucking wife. How about you take out a second mortgage and you lie to her about, you know, maybe you made some investments that didn't turn out. I don't know. We need the second mortgage, whatever. And you buy me a cool goth car to drive to high school. How about that? Like a nice black convertible with like the chain wheel like Elvira drove in her movie or whatever. And then like I'm that guy, and it's like, oh, and when, you know, and we're still, you know, it's like, oh, we'll still meet up. We'll still meet up every other Sunday, like whatever. You'll feel good about it. It won't just be blackmail. It's like, again, you got to work that uncle, you know. But then again, then you can keep a cycle of blackmail and uncle fucking going. Where it's like, okay, now it's like, you know, he hurt his back or whatever, and you're like, well, then you need to give me at least half, if not 2/3. You better stretch that oxy prescription. You better claim that you lost a bottle of it every once in a while. You just hand me, now I'm driving around in a black Cadillac slinging oxys in my high school, and I just found a way to turn a tragic uncle fucking into like some sort of cool goth high school movie where now I'm the shit, you know. And maybe that's not good advice, I guess. Whatever. But at the same time, is that what they mean when they say life gives you lemons, turn them into lemonade? You blackmail your uncle that's fucking you into a used or at least a car. It's not easy to have a car when you're in high school. Yeah, you blackmail him into a car and a painkiller prescription that you can sling on the side and take a few on your own. You're gonna need them. You are getting fucked by your uncle. I mean, what are you gonna do? But it's like, you know, oh, John, you should have more sympathy for people like that, and you know, I do. But, you know, because that's a pretty shitty hand of cards to be handed. But I pulled a silver lining right out of my ass just there. Like, you know, it's like, is anything I'm saying? And you might be like, yeah, well, you're just being funny. I'm like, everything I was just saying is possible. What, your uncle's fucking you and you can't film it and you can't blackmail him? Why not? It's 100% doable. He'll be like, well, you'll be the laughing stock of the school. Maybe you don't want. Maybe he plays a little hardball with you. But the thing, you're already like a goth kid or whatever. You'd be like, you lie to him and be like, I'm already the trashiest goth kid in my fucking school. It's like, I'll sell it to the company that did Pam and Tommy Lee's thing or whatever. And it's just like, oh, they can watch, but you'll be in prison. At that point, it won't even be like, I'm blackmailing you to fuck up your marriage. I'm blackmailing you for like going up on charges, and then you'll be getting fucked in prison. And then you won't be getting any oxys or cars off of those guys. Let me tell you what. I don't know. That's the thing. I never had to deal with that. I don't really know. Like, yeah, I just kind of grew up sort of aimless. You know, that's my only actual thing that I can claim or whatever. Nothing has been squandered. I did the best I could with the hand I was dealt. But yeah, I don't know. For some reason, though, dressing in black and being like, I don't know. I don't even know. I think I'm just off the rails with this here. Like, I kind of got nothing. But see, the wonderful thing is it's exactly 50 minutes in. And normally I don't read Dear Asshole when I do these by myself. But a lot of the times, the solo episodes are a bit shorter. I don't make it to 50 minutes, you know? And I'm an asshole. And I'm starting to come around on this book. Not that it's good, but that maybe I should be reading it, you know? Maybe it's not letters for me to send to the morons that muck up my life, but maybe they're letters secretly addressed to me. Maybe my folks were right about that. Maybe they were like, we're giving you this book because you're an asshole. All right, hang on. I gotta continue smoking and drinking. All right, I'm gonna read a solo page out of Dear Asshole. And maybe I'm doing future guest hosts or future guest laugh tracks a bit of a favor. Let's see. Overlook a bit of Asshole Hotel Maid. That's punching down. Holiday decorations. Wow, I've gotten through a lot of this. Dear Asshole was still white penis, by the way. Thank you for pointing out that you couldn't see the book just there. But Dear Asshole stole my pen. And then I was like, someone wrote penis there. And then, who the fuck? It wasn't Brad Birch, I don't think. No, I remember. It was Nick Church, I think. I'm not looking right at it right now, so I can't quite remember who said what, but I think it was Nick Church who pointed out that I did that on an earlier episode. I was so drunk that I forgot, which is just... I love that, by the way. I love that... Like, look... I don't think I'm ever going to get anywhere big just doing this podcast, but I like that, like, just enough people kind of pay attention to it, and, you know, out of boredom, you know, you start listening to it, and you're like, John's a little bit funny, you know, so you keep listening to it or whatever. And, okay, here I think is the newest one. And just enough people that I've met and know through music or whatever to kind of regularly keep up with it. This is so heartwarming. Kind of regularly keep up with it. Just enough to point out when I say something dumb on one episode, they can go, you did this in another one. That's all I really want. It feels like a little bit of a community. It's like being a band without having to lift anything or do anything or write songs or pay any attention. I like writing songs, by the way. I got my new Mac Mini today, so I'm going to get back to music a little more until I get some other thing and then I get distracted. But anyway, this particular page in Dear Asshole, and I think maybe I'll like it a little bit. It's called Dear Cheapskate Asshole. Now, I also do imagine that it's going to be punching down pretty severely because Dear Cheapskate Asshole might just be someone who's kind of poor, and I still sense that I don't know who really made this book. Possibly Satan. But according to the show Lucifer, Satan has money, so it's like, you know, again, being very... Actually, by the way, this is the character of Lucifer Morningstar would never stoop to writing this book, so saying Satan did it, at least that version is a little unfair. Or other versions of Satan through history, like Ronald Reagan or Mr. Burns or whoever. I don't know. Sorry, I got nothing. I am starting to hit the thing a little bit, but that's okay because I only have a few minutes left to kill, and I have to read Dear Cheapskate Asshole. The jig is up, you miserly penny-pinching Scrooge. Oh, that's so funny. God, who is this for? We all know you aren't poor. Oh, I stand corrected. So stop acting like the repo men are coming for your possessions every time a bill is due. Oh no, am I? Is this resonating with me a little bit? It might be, because I do kind of hate that. Okay, there's more to life than accumulating a financial nest egg, so take that stick out of your tightwad ass and live a little. Stop wrapping gifts in newspaper. Okay, but then that's the hill we're dying on. Not like, don't buy the cheapest version of whatever you can off Amazon so it just breaks, even though you have enough money to get the nicer thing that you know is going to work correctly or whatever. Like, read the reviews, people. That's the important thing. Yeah. Anyway, buy a colored television. Oh, that's hilarious that in 2011 someone has a black and white TV. I wonder if that would almost cost more. It might now. If you're like, I want to find a black and white CRT. That's like vintage. It belongs in a museum. Buy a colored television. Hell, go crazy and pick up a new roll of aluminum foil instead of using that same little wrinkled piece over and over. Okay, this person you're talking to has mental health problems, and I think we're back to punching down again here. Still, though, I always get the sense that, like, as unfunny as this is, there's like a slight chance that maybe they did come up with funnier stuff, and either the publishing company or more likely their dad was like, don't say that, just say, you know, instead of reusing the same condom over and over again, which is what I would have written, that same little wrinkled piece of aluminum foil. Like, okay, we don't actually know anyone who's ever done that. We don't really know anyone that reuses a condom either, but because when you're really poor, you just don't use them, and you have kids, so you can get poorer. But nevertheless, at least, is that funny, I guess? Or am I just being gross? I don't know. I think whoever actually listens to this to the point where they get to Dear Asshole every episode at the end of an hour of aimless drunken rambling might think that's a little funny. Say something in the comments if you think the condom joke is funny, or at least funnier than the foil joke. Of course it's funnier than the foil joke. What am I doing? All right, let's get through this. And by the way, how old is your car? Now, hey, old enough to know better. My car isn't quite old enough to drive itself. I did have a car that was old enough to drink at one point. Getting it up to voting age isn't that hard, but maybe they're just good at, you know, keeping a car going. You are, you know, getting from point A to B. But anyway, how old is your car? That thing has seen better days. It's sort of like Pamela Anderson, only without the airbags. What the fuck does that mean? How old was Pam Anderson in 2011? She was like 10 years past being the hottest chick anyone could think of. You know what I mean? Like, when would Barbed Wire come out? Like 2002? I'm not saying it was good, but everyone still wanted to bone her. 10 years past that? Without the airbags? Kind of a fake titties joke. Safety first. That's insane. Okay, whatever. And then Toodles. P.S. No, you're not eligible for food stamps, you asshole. I'm not going to throw this at the drum set like I normally do. I'm just going to calmly fold the other pages over so it's easier to find where I was. And I'm going to set it over here. I'm going to do what I often do. It's a different gun today, but I'm going to use a gun as a paperweight because that's funny. Yeah, I wasn't joking about the Prius and the gun collection. But, yeah, that's like a perfect page of Dear Asshole to be left with on, I don't know, on a solo episode. And speaking of old cars and Meredith not being here, I'm not going to start on a whole new thing, but this is tucked away safely at the end. If someone tries to steal your car from you, you should kill them. Because I know so many people who have had a car thing happen, and it's like, the people go like, it's not worth someone's life, it's not worth whatever. Yeah, it is. Because it's not the fucking early 70s, you know, where it's like, it's just a car. They cost so much money, they're so hard to get, and it's like, oh, now I can't go to work. But you could end up losing your living space and having all this, and your health care and all this shit, by having your car, you know, crashed like Meredith or stolen. Like another friend of mine got like carjacked, and he's like, well, you let him, like, you know, like, I don't know. And by the way, the guy that got carjacked, I won't name any names, but it's like, I kind of looked at where it happened. It's like, I don't think he was just driving along minding his own business. I think he was doing a little business in an area where things turned on him, which sucks. But, you know, if you're going to get paranoid, remember, it's not that likely if you're just driving around, but keep your doors locked. Yeah, and if someone runs up to you at a red light, just run them the fuck over. Like, is their life... Okay, if you're carjacking cars just a joyride around and crash them, okay, I'll answer that. Is their life worth... No. What were they ever going to do? They're going to take your car. Eventually, they're going to go to jail. They're going to do it again. Someone else will shoot them, maybe me. Or they'll just go through the system and they'll die of a fentanyl overdose. And it'll be like, okay, well, we could have just skipped all that and just run them down with like an old Honda Odyssey. Like, you know, it's just like, so really the main tenet, I think, I guess, if I'm any example, and maybe I am, if you're truly a goth person, you will shed no black tears for running over a carjacker with your old broken car so you can live to go to your old shitty job and afford your scary, shitty, fucked up apartment for one more day. But it's better than living in a tent. And I think, with the right kind of goth mindset, even after backing over a 19-year-old with a gun and running him over again and backing him over and running him over again, you'll just get to continue your life. Don't call the cops. You know. Don't go, something happened, just keep going. And if anything ever happens, just go, what? What? And they're like, we saw you, what? Well, I guess if you could talk to my lawyer. And be like, well, we just want to ask a few questions. You go, what? Like, where were you? Like, I don't know. What? I don't drive a car.
The Reverend John Wheeler podcast takes zero responsibility for the words, actions, or ideas of its host, guests, or listeners. Though the people on the screen may at times be speaking directly to you and may occasionally give you direct calls to action, neither Reverend John nor the Alchemical Cocktail Lounge are under any moral or legal obligation to answer for the potentially disastrous repercussions that may arise if you are stupid enough to actually follow the orders of a raving lunatic. Think for yourself and do whatever you want, because you're on your own. If anyone ever tries to sue this podcast, black SUVs will converge on your location in the darkness of night and you will never be seen again. Remember to like and subscribe.